The specific research study I have chosen to discuss today is a recent 2022 Harvard study on monkeys regarding the triggers that led postpartum mother monkeys to care for their offspring. In the study, researcher Margaret Livingstone had separated adult monkeys from their infants. Some of the infants were alive, but another one was delivered as a stillborn. After sedating the mother, who clung to her stillborn to prevent aggression towards researchers, the stillborn infant was taken away. After waking from sedation, the mother was showing obvious signs of distress, vocalizing loudly and searching around the enclosure in agitation. This distress caused other monkeys to become agitated as well. Livingstone attempted to decrease the levels of stress, gave the mother a stuffed toy and observed her bond with the toy. The mother picked up the toy and calmed down while holding it. She maintained the toy at her chest for weeks without distress and behaved just as other mothers did with live infants. If another monkey or even familiar human approached, she would become aggressive, a defensive behavior expected for female monkeys with infants. However, after 10 days, she abandoned the stuffed toy without any other instances of distress. Livingstone offered stuffed toys to other mothers after separating them from their live infants. These mothers also bonded with their toys and carried them around for weeks to months afterwards. However, 2 other monkeys who were offered toys after 3 births between them showed no distress or interest in the toys after waking up from sedation. This suggested that attachment to the toys was not a rare occurrence, but possibly dependent on other factors, presumably due to already having formed attachment to their own living infants. Livingstone's study on postpartum monkeys bears a strong resemblance to the controversial work of Harry Harlow. If you've never heard of his most famous experiment, the mother monkey experiment, it essentially separated infant monkeys from their mothers at birth and placed the infant with inanimate surrogates. He found that the infant monkeys only bonded with the inanimate wire monkeys who were covered in a soft cloth, and as such, could provide the infant monkey with comfort. This preference for the cloth mother monkey happened whether or not they could offer the infant milk from a bottle attached to their body. It even held up when the monkey was presented with both a wired monkey with food and a soft monkey without food. Unless the infant needed to eat, it stayed with the cloth monkey the rest of the time. If that wasn't enough, Harlow took it a few steps further and would create frightening situations, like allowing the monkey to roam around the cage and then playing alarms from the toy to scare them. In these situations, the infants ran to the cloth monkey for safety. Harlow would even remove the cloth monkey from the room to see what would happen and found that the infants would scream, cry, and freeze up. The effects on these monkeys were devastating, and some were kept in these isolated conditions for months to over a year. Harlow observed self-mutilating behavior. After attempting to reconcile the infants with other monkeys, Harlow found that the isolated infants generally didn't know how to act with other monkeys. They were scared of them, and were easily bullied. They would later get aggressive, had difficulty mating, and female monkeys became inadequate mothers. After a year, the effects of isolation were considered irreversible, and the monkeys never recovered. The work of Harry Harlow on monkeys was and is still considered to be cruel and propelled regulations on animal studies. So why did Livingstone essentially recreate one of the most unethical animal studies, and how was she able to do it? The purpose of Livingstone's study was to establish if there was any evidence for the biological basis of infant caregiver attachment, a view that was largely disputed due to behavioral theory. Many sociologists and psychologists held the perspective that infant caregiver attachment was based on the learned association between mother and hunger satiation. At the turn of the 20th century, child rearing practices turned away from using religion and affection towards more early scientific principles like conditioning and training. These came about due to the new behaviorist theory in psychology and led to mothers getting advice to demand obedience and ignore temper tantrums from their children. Many women's magazines of the time directly discouraged physical contact with infant children, as it was believed that it would spoil the child. This notion was popular and was implemented in nurseries where holding premature infants and visiting children was heavily restricted on the basis of limiting the spread of diseases. However, by the 1940s, these isolated infants showed an increase of psychological problems as they grew older and was evidence of isolation being harmful. While Livingstone points to this research as being insightful to human caregiver-infant attachment, such as child rearing practices and hospital policies for newborn visitations, she also states in her research that the extent of which these observations bear on human maternal bonding is unknown, but suggests that soft touch may be calming, therapeutic, perhaps even psychologically necessary throughout the lifetime, not just in infants. This is ethically problematic in the sense that this study was not adequately relevant to human bonding, and as such, did not justify the disruption or emotional distress of the monkeys used in the study. You could argue for the use of animals in research by weighing the potential benefits to humans against the harm inflicted on animals. However, in the case of this study, the research purpose should have at least been relevant to align with improving human bonding practices. Animal behavioral scientist Holly Gutridge mentioned that this study ignores literature we already have on the attachment theory and argues that this study represents a larger issue within animal research, where questionable studies and papers are passed despite institutional reviews and get published in significant journals. Another point she adds is that Livingstone could have studied wild monkeys who lost their infants naturally as a way to minimize harm to them. Furthermore, the study caused disruption to the natural bonding practices of these monkeys. In the study, a postpartum mother who was sedated had her live infant taken away and it was replaced with a toy. She had not yet expelled her placenta, despite manual massage from veterinary staff. The veterinary staff suggested bringing back her infant, as the suckling process could help expel the placenta naturally. But upon presenting the infant to the mother, she had moved back to where the toy was, seemingly having a stronger attachment to it than to her infant. Although it seems that all the mothers eventually discarded the toy after months. The possible ethical ramifications towards the infant monkeys are numerous. Ethically, animal rights emphasizes the inherent value of animals as rational beings and argues against using animals as mere means to an end. However, Livingstone is no stranger to controversial research. Animal rights groups recall how a previous study of Livingstone's included temporarily suturing shut the eyelids of infant monkeys. The purpose of that study was to see how not being able to see would impact an infant monkey's intelligence. Petitions from groups such as PETA and letters from primatologists and animal behavioral researchers condemning the use of these monkeys in Livingstone's research were sent to Harvard Medical School. But the school defended their researcher and the purpose of the study, stating, "The study can help scientists understand maternal bonding in humans and can inform comforting interventions to help women cope with loss of an immediate aftermath of suffering a miscarriage or experiencing a stillborn birth." While some argue that using animals in research can be crucial for the advancement of medical applications, there should at least be some sort of payoff between the disruption and harm done to the animals and the value of what we gain that contributes to human beings. However, most research done on animals is known to not usually be transferable to humans. For example, the majority of drugs that pass animal testing typically fail in human trials. According to White Coast Waste, a non-profit tax-paying watchdog group aimed at funding animal studies, the government sends out around $15 billion in grants to universities each year, and in all of the studies, animal experimenters bring in the most amount of money. Emily Trudeau, neuroscientist who experimented on rodents and now works for PETA, has said, "There is a financial incentive to keep doing this so more papers can get published, as this is a way to get more funding and job security." In response to the controversy, Livingstone released a statement. She said, "Do I wish we lived in a world where generating this important knowledge were possible without the use of live animals? Of course. Alas, we are not there yet. However, recent laws and technology would disagree with this approach, as tissue cultures, mini organs, and even AI models are reducing the need for live animals." On the legal side of things, the Senate passed the FDA Modernization Act just last September, which would end the requirement of testing medicine on animals before human trials. Whether researchers like Livingstone like it or not, animal research is a step closer to being a thing of the past.